Hello, welcome once again to Lehto's Law. I'm Steve Lehto. Got another story sent to me by Josh, who's on fire. And this is a great story, but it's one of these things that raises a whole bunch of points that we should all think about. But the Ohio gamer was sentenced to 15 months in prison for the swatting case. And like I said, this one's pretty much a vortex of stupidity, but we'll examine it and dissect it as we go. The teenager was sentenced for his role in a fake 911 call to a Kansas address that resulted in police fatally shooting a man. So the author of this story is Roxana Hedgeman, and this was published by the Associated Press, so it was widely reported. But an Ohio gamer who was upset about a bet of $1.50 while playing Call of Duty World War II online was sentenced to 15 months in prison for his role in recruiting someone else to make a bogus emergency call that resulted in the fatal shooting of a Kansas man by police. Casey Viner, 19 years old, of North College Hill, Ohio, will also be restricted from gaming activity for 2 years. During the 2 years, he'll be on supervised release after serving his prison term. This is from U.S. District Judge Eric Melgren when he announced the sentence. Viner pleaded guilty in April to felony charges of conspiracy and obstruction of justice in the hope that he would not be sent to prison. Viner admitted trying to hide his involvement in the 2017 incident when he realized that he had gotten someone killed. Prosecutors and defense lawyers in their plea agreement had recommended a sentence of 2 years of probation with the added condition that Viner be confined for 6 months to his home unless attending school, work, or church. They also jointly recommended the gaming restriction. But, as you may have just caught, the judge decided to ignore those recommendations and he sentenced the man to 15 months in prison. And so you may ask me, are judges allowed to do that? Well, yes and no. Judges can do anything they want, pretty much. However, there are situations where the parties, that is the prosecution and the defense, the parties will come to an agreement and go, look, my guy will plead guilty if you will sentence him thus, or we get him sentenced like this. You recommend this sentence. And you say, well, if they recommend the sentence and the judge doesn't take the recommendation, what good's it do you? Many states will allow you to enter an agreement that says, we will conditionally plead guilty, or we will agree to plead guilty if the judge follows these sentencing guidelines. But if the judge doesn't or isn't inclined to, we can then withdraw the guilty plea and then proceed as if we hadn't done it. So that kind of an agreement is possible, but they apparently didn't have one here. So they recommended the judge not sentence the man to prison, but he got 15 months anyway. Melgren, the judge, said a prison sentence was required to reflect the seriousness of the offense. It was foreseeable that something bad could happen by calling an armed police force to respond to what police believed was an escalating situation of violence. We impose sentences not only for what people intend, but what happened, the judge said. The death of 28-year-old Andrew Finch in Wichita, Kansas, drew national attention to swatting, which is a form of retaliation in which someone reports a false emergency to get authorities, particularly a SWAT team, to descend on an address. Now, I have problems with that also, okay? The idea that somebody can use a, fake phone number and call in an emergency and get a SWAT team to show up someplace and, guns ablazing when nothing's happening. I understand the police have got to take all the phone calls seriously, but you'd think they'd say, well, someone's calling with a blocked ID or something fake about the phone number or something that seems unrealistic, or it's a teenage kid, So I'm surprised this doesn't happen more often with respect to deadly outcomes, but we hear about people being inconvenienced, and of course the police show up, like I said, with their armored vehicles and the full body armor and so on. So authorities said Viner recruited another man to swat an opponent, 20-year-old Shane Gaskell, in Wichita, but the address they used was old, leading police to Finch, who was not involved in the dispute or the video game. Gaskell, who had previously given his old Wichita address to Viner, was charged as a co-conspirator after knowingly giving Barris the same former address and taunting him to try something. Barris, a 26-year-old Los Angeles man with an online reputation for swatting, called police from Los Angeles on December 28th, 2017, to falsely report a shooting and kidnapping at that Wichita address. Finch was then shot by police when he opened the door to see what was happening outside. The federal indictment alleged that a forensic examination of Finer's iPhone recovered his deleted outgoing messages, including one in which he allegedly wrote, "I was involved in someone's death." Finch's family has sued the city of Wichita and the officers involved. Police have said that the officer who shot Finch thought that Finch was reaching for a gun because he moved a hand toward his waistband. The local district attorney declined to charge the officer. Gaskell has struck a deal for deferred prosecution that could allow the charges against him to be dropped. Barros was sentenced in March to 20 years in prison after pleading guilty to 51 counts for making fake emergency calls and threats around the country, including the deadly hoax in Kansas. Police and prosecutors believe it is the longest prison sentence ever imposed for swatting. So Barros got 20 years in prison, and Casey Viner got 15 months in prison. And again, one of the interesting things about this was that the prosecution and the defense had apparently agreed to recommend a sentence for the man, and the judge decided to exceed that recommended sentence. And like I said, they can do that. And I don't do a lot of criminal work anymore. I used to do a little bit of it in the old days. And I had situations before I was talking to a prosecutor, and I said, look, my guy will plead guilty if this will happen, whatever this might be. And I've had a prosecutor say, I've got no problem with that, but that's where it becomes tricky. I've had a prosecutor say, we can recommend it, but the judge can do what the judge wants to do. And I've also had a prosecutor say, if you want to, we can make it that if the judge decides not to do that, then you can withdraw the offer. And some judges have a reputation as being the ones that you can, often you can, speaking through their clerk or something, ask, by the way, can we both sides consult with and find out if this is even worth pursuing? And some judges say, yeah, if you guys agree to it and the prosecutor's good with it and defense is good with it, knock yourselves out. And I've seen some judges just say, no, sentencing's up to me. You guys can make recommendations all you want. I'm the one with the robe and the gavel, much the same way that the police, that's the person with the badge and the gun. The judge's robe and gavel go a long way towards meaning that the judge can do what the judge wants to do. So, again, the Ohio gamer sentenced to 15 months in prison for the swatting case, and the other guy got 20 years in prison. So I hope that would be an indication that perhaps this swatting thing will go away. But again, good luck with that. But I'm still a little bit bothered by the fact that one anonymous phone call from blocked ID can cause a whole chain of events like this to happen. And I understand people are saying, but Steve, they could be spoofing a phone number, whatever. Yeah. But when they respond to that call, do you really go up and knock on the door and then shoot the first person you see? So again, I'm not a law enforcement guy, never pretended to be one. And I've dealt with a lot of them in my line of work. But so that's the situation. But again, Josh, thanks for passing it along. Ohio gamer sentenced to 15 months in prison for swatting case above and beyond the recommendations of both parties who had been there when the plea was entered. If you have good stories, good ideas, feel free to send them my way. Otherwise, questions or comments, put them below. Talk to you later.